Coworker turned scissors into a weapon against my hair at a holiday setup. Now hour is pulling me into drama meetings. I work remotely, which means I get the freedom to do pretty much whatever I want with my clothes and my hair. I absolutely love it, even though I'm still pretty new to this way of working. There's also an office in my city where we have work events sometimes, and a few non-remote coworkers are based there. Enter Terry, he also works remotely. Every Thursday morning, we meet up to coordinate on projects that happen to cross over our departments. From the moment I met him, he's always had something to say about my hair and clothes. Most of the time, I brush it off and move on, it's not a big deal. But the comments about my hair? That comes up way too often. Terry is obsessed with the idea that my big, curly hair would look so much better short, and he's even shown me a photo of his wife, who has hair like mine but she keeps it really short. I just don't like my hair short, it's not my thing. I politely tell him every single time, not for me, I'm afraid. Still, he never seems to take the hint. So, we've got our upcoming holiday party at the office and I decide to volunteer to help set it up. I'll be honest, it's less about being generous and more because there's extra pay and bonus vacation days in it for me, and I have the Caribbean on my mind. Let's be real. Terry is helping with the setup too, and things just get weird. He has this pair of scissors and decides to show us how cutting aluminum foil sharpens them. Weird flex, but okay. He keeps saying things like, "It cuts so smooth," and keeps demonstrating by cutting random stuff. Suddenly, in front of me and his teammate, Terry grabs a chunk of my hair and cuts it. Just like that, no warning, no asking. Just does it. My hair goes down past my butt, and he chopped it right at hip length, so it was a giant chunk. The situation instantly escalates. Of course, HR gets notified. Terry's defense? He claims he didn't mean to do it, that he got wrapped up in it and let his intrusive thoughts win. He adds that he's on the spectrum and that he's incredibly sorry. A coworker later tells me Terry's been moping around, saying I must hate him and that he's been really depressed since the incident. HR's pulling me into a meeting tomorrow. The policy is that they have to tell you what it's about, and they want my input. How do I feel about it, and how do I want to move forward? Here's where I stand. I know for sure I don't want to see Terry ever again if I can help it. At the very least, I want the cost of my stylist appointment covered. Calling the police isn't really something I want to do, even though I keep flashing back to the shock and anger in the moment. I usually try to believe the best in people, but this time, I just can't. The whole thing is so unhinged. Everyone keeps telling me how bizarre it was, and yes, that Terry is a bit of a goofball but excitable and sweet. But that doesn't even begin to excuse it. My mind keeps spinning. How do I even handle this? What can I reasonably ask for, and what's just my pure rage and anger talking? The truth is, I'm so furious, and I can't talk to anyone else about it because my family and friends would want me to go totally scorched earth. I'm just at a loss. Update 1. I'm sitting at a pub near HQ, enjoying a cold beer because I finally have the rest of the day off. Honestly, after the morning I've had, I deserve it. Just hours ago, I went into that HR meeting, my nerves absolutely shot, carrying the full weight of what happened and the advice I'd gathered from talking to my mom, my best friends, and my partner last night. They were angry, livid, actually, but their advice was solid, and I needed to feel supported like that. I took their words with me, and I sure as hell leaned on my own sense of justice. In this state, the Crown Act isn't just some distant piece of legislation, it's real protection, taken seriously both locally and federally. So, I wasn't just overreacting, I was right to be rattled and pissed. Ahead of the meeting, I sent a formal email to HR, requesting records and emphasizing that this had become a police matter. That got their attention in a hurry. Suddenly, the meeting wasn't just with a simple HR rep. This morning, as I logged on, new names popped up on the invite: my direct supervisor, Anne, Gary, the HR head, and Leon, the supervisor of the man who did this to me. The meeting started with the usual string of HR apologies. This should never have happened, and we take these matters very seriously, over and over. Then they laid out the steps they'd already taken. The guy is currently suspended, formally written up, and if, big if, he returns, he'll have to do mandatory training. It's all documented, with witness statements I'll be given. I now have the option to only work with Leon when my job overlaps with his department, so I don't have to go anywhere near my offender. They reminded me that work provides free therapy. I'm already in regular therapy, so they offered to cover this month's sessions with a reimbursement. Then came the part that made it feel real: paid leave through January 6th, effective immediately when I left the meeting. I'll still be paid for party shifts and bonus hours already promised, but I'm completely excused from party prep going forward. After all that, they asked me if there was more I wanted done. How was I feeling? I thanked them for their attention but didn't sugarcoat how serious this was for me. I told them how it bordered on assault and felt racially targeted. I explained, as a black woman, how much care and time I put into maintaining the health and length of my hair, his repeated comments about it, leading up to this. It was chilling, deliberate. I don't ever want to be around this man again. I'm filing a police report because not only did he touch me without my permission, but he cut my hair with a dangerous object. I'd already sent images to my stylist and fully expect to be reimbursed for getting my hair professionally treated after this. When they asked about cost, I told them I had an emergency appointment Saturday and wouldn't know until then. And wasn't sure if that was possible, but Gary said he'd look into it. Leon, God, I was so grateful for him, jumped in, backing me up. As a black man, he said he'd be shocked if they didn't cover it, that black hair care is expensive, time-consuming, and essential. He reminded everyone in the room of the company's supposed anti-racist values. To let something like this slide would be unforgivable. Leon's words stuck with me. Lily is being so calm right now and I'm impressed cuz that's some next level racism from where I sit. I admitted I was shaken and furious, but I wanted this meeting to be productive. Gary verbally agreed to reimbursement, and I requested an email confirming every promise made in that room. An hour later, I had that confirmation sitting in my inbox. All I need to do is send my invoice or receipt to Gary. During the meeting, they also mentioned the man had sent an email to me, through HR. I could read it or not, they left it up to me. I decided to have them send it to me, if only for the confession and confirmation on record. I showed them the damage to my hair, and Leon was visibly angry. It's clear to me that this guy is probably on borrowed time. If not fired for this, it'll be for something else. His supervisor seemed out of patience. Last night, alone with my thoughts, I cried over my hair. I felt silly, it's just hair, right? But hair is a huge part of my identity. It links me to my indigenous roots and my sense of self. I even shared that in the meeting. It breaks my heart. Nothing can undo it. My stylist said from the photos, a trim will be necessary, possibly a smile-shaped cut, which someone suggested and I forwarded to her. Before the meeting ended, my mom texted me. She's incredible. I told her everything, every ugly detail. She said she was proud of me and pushed me to report this to the police. I will. She's nudging me to sue, too, though she's gentle about it. Honestly, the idea sounds exhausting. Processing this trauma is enough for now. I'll think about the legal side after the holidays. And now, suddenly, I have all this time. I can't remember the last time I had true, unstructured free time. I used to work multiple jobs, juggle side hustles, always hustling just to make rent and feed myself. This job finally offers financial comfort and actual benefits, which is why I always went above and beyond. My efforts haven't gone unnoticed. I'm a damn good employee, and it was satisfying to have that recognized, but that doesn't temper the anger. I'm still so angry. I can't help reflecting on Anne's behavior in the meeting. She was kind, handed me a tissue when I teared up, but seemed desperately uncomfortable, almost tortured, like she'd rather disappear into the floor. I wanted to shake her and say, no one is enjoying this, get it together. But I get it. Emotions all around. So, here I am, wondering how to fill the days ahead. Maybe a trip? Try a new hobby? Revisit an old one? Decorate my place? The possibilities are endless, but right now I'm open to suggestions. I could use the distraction. At the end of this long, strange day, I realize how important it is to thank the people who've supported me with kind words, practical advice, and even hair care tips. All the love and encouragement has made all of this awful experience, a little more bearable. So here's wishing everyone a beautiful holiday. I know the holidays can be tough, but I hope you find a little pocket of joy in the middle of it all. Edit. Now that the day is over, I want to update. I spent most of my day doing things that genuinely brought me joy. I wandered into a museum at random, sipped an espresso martini, just let myself drift. But before that, after moping at the bar long enough, I did what I resolved to do and reported the incident to the police. Stressful as it was, my lawyer strongly advised I get it on record, especially if I decide to sue. Later, I decided to check my email, and there it was, his message, sent to me but funneled through HR. As I read through it, I saw a very clear admission of what happened, almost startling in its honesty. His reasoning was odd, and he kept repeating the words intrusive thoughts. He even pointed out that he's on the spectrum, as if it might explain, or maybe excuse, his choices. He brushed on how remote work had saved him, that he's awkward and just wants to be friendly, but he did admit that he took things way too far. The whole message was strangely detached and self-aware all at once, like he was trying to understand himself as much as explain his actions to me. Update 2. I just got home from my emergency appointment, hair wrapped in a silk scarf that smells faintly of rosemary and steam, and I can finally breathe without feeling my chest vibrate. The salon felt like a chapel. My stylist didn't touch a single curl without asking first, and the first time she lifted the severed chunk and laid it across my palm, I cried without warning. I've shed hair before, trims, braids, blowouts, but this felt like holding an object someone stole and I was getting back, ruined. She did what she could, a gentle U-shape to blend the blunt hole, minimal layers to preserve weight so my curls still cascade instead of collapse, a treatment that felt like warm rain. We saved more than I feared we'd lose, but it's shorter. It's still me. The mirror part was strange. I kept bracing for that flash of fury and instead felt this quiet, stubborn pride. He doesn't get to decide what I see when I look at myself. While I was under the dryer, my phone lit up with 2 voicemails and an email from Gary. The police detective called first. He'd already spoken to Leon and security, and they pulled footage from the event space. There's no audio, but you can see everything. Him demonstrating with a foil, the scissors raised, my head turned away while I'm tying ribbon, his hand reaching the cut. Watching it is an option, he said, but not necessary. Between the footage and the written statements, he's kicking it to the DA for a misdemeanor battery charge. He used the phrase clear intent to touch without consent, which both made my stomach drop and my spine straighten. He asked if I wanted him to request a temporary no-contact order on my behalf. I said yes. Then Gary, he'd gotten my stylist invoice, today's services plus a follow-up treatment and protective style booking in January, just under $700 total, and approved it with a will expedite. He also attached a letter on company letterhead, effective immediately, Terry's employment is terminated for violation of workplace conduct and safety policies. There was a line about zero tolerance for harassment or violence, which read like a brochure, but then a second page that was new, an internal no-contact directive, extending to family or third parties, with instructions to escalate any breach straight to legal. It felt serious in a way the earlier suspension didn't. I took a walk after, because the word terminated rattled in my mouth like a loose coin. On my way home, Ann called me. She sounded like she'd been bracing all day and finally let go. She apologized, really apologized, not the HR kind, and told me something I didn't know. The teammate who watched it happen sent her a statement that included direct quotes from the past few Thursdays, all the "you'd look better if" and "have you ever thought about" comments he made, and the moment last week when he'd held his phone up with a photo of his wife and said, like this. And said reading it made her feel sick, that it made it impossible to pretend it was impulsive or harmless. She thanked me, which felt odd, but she said it pushed the company to add a specific section on hair-based discrimination and bodily autonomy to our anti-harassment training. Leon, apparently, is helping write it. That part made me smile. There was one more email waiting when I got back, forwarded by HR, from his personal account, sent to Gary, addressed to me. Not an apology this time. It was his wife. She said she was devastated, that he's starting some kind of intensive program, that he's not a monster, and asked me to consider mercy and not pursue charges because he's already lost everything. It knocked the wind out of me for a second, not because it changed anything but because it was so calculated. I forwarded it straight to Gary and my lawyer without responding. 10 minutes later, Gary wrote back confirming that reminded him that any contact via intermediaries is a violation and that all communication must stay through HR. The detective, when I told him, said it bolstered the no-contact request. I've been surprised by the oddest moments. In the salon, a little girl with a head full of coils asked if she could see my princess hair and then whispered to her mom that it looked like a waterfall. A stranger in line at the coffee shop complimented my scarf. My partner met me afterward and tucked my curls behind my ear the way he always does, and it didn't make me flinch. Tiny, ordinary things that felt like handing pieces of myself back, one by one. Corporate legal reached out too, of course, a resolution conversation, their words. They floated an offer that included additional paid time, a lump sum, and a confidentiality clause so broad it read like I'd never be allowed to describe an office party again. I told them I'd review through counsel after the holidays and that any agreement would not muzzle me from talking about my own experience. It was the first time I said that out loud, calmly, and meant it. My lawyer told me to take the time. Nothing about this needs to be rushed for their convenience. Tonight I'm going to wash the salon smell out and the treatment in, wrap my hair, and let my nervous system come down. I booked a quick, cheap flight for next week to a beach where I can do nothing but float and read and pretend the only sharp thing in my life is the line where the water meets the sky. There's a police case number on my fridge, a reimbursement confirmation in my inbox, and a stack of silk scrunchies on my nightstand. It's a strange little still life, but it's mine. Update 3. I spent yesterday morning in a courtroom that smelled like dry paper and old coffee, sitting on a bench that made my thigh fall asleep. The temporary order turned into a full no-contact order in under 20 minutes. I said my name and told the judge, as simply as I could, what happened. The detective had already filed the video and statements. I didn't have to perform pain to prove it. Terry was there, in a suit that didn't fit right, staring at a spot somewhere above the judge's shoulder. When his attorney started to call it impulsive, the judge cut him off and said, "Scissors are not a thought experiment." I felt something unclench in a place I hadn't noticed was tight. On the way out, a bailiff watched me like a hawk. The wife was in the hallway, eyes glassy, hands knotted around her purse strap. She tried to step toward me and he put a palm out without looking away from me. She mouthed "I'm sorry" so softly I almost convinced myself I imagined it. I kept walking. I didn't need to find out whether she meant sorry for me or sorry for him. By afternoon, the DA called. Misdemeanor battery, formal charges filed, arraignment set for next month. I don't have to be there unless I want to. I asked about the care package that showed up at my building over the weekend with a note that said "for your hair." The concierge flagged it and never let it get to me, but security scanned the card and sent me a photo. It had his name on it, clear as day. The DA said they'd be incorporating it into their file because the timing was after the temporary order. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I heard him say, "You did exactly right by not opening it." I threw the photo out and took the stairs until my legs burned. Corporate legal tried another round, this time with their soft voices lawyer who says my name like a prayer before a pitch. They'd revised the agreement, tighter language, narrower NDA, all the usual choreography. I told them what I would accept, The right to talk about my own experience in my own words, nothing that prevents me from participating in training or advocacy, a donation to a local org that gets textured hair care kits into schools, and the actual policy changes in writing with timelines, not vibes. I said it without shaking. Leon sat in on that call and didn't say much until the end, when he just said, "This is what accountability looks like," and went quiet again. An hour later, Gary sent a draft where my carve-outs were in black and white, the donation line was real, and the training module had a name and dates. They still slid in mutual non-disparagement. My lawyer circled it and sent it back with a note that might as well have read "try again." 2 steps forward, 1 step, fine, we'll argue over commas later. I went to the beach anyway. I landed with a carry-on full of silk and SPF and nothing that plugs in besides a charger. The first morning, the ocean was shy, just a steady hush and a line of pelicans in military formation. I walked in up to my waist with my scarf tied high and tight, and for a second every nerve I had flickered with the memory of cold steel at my hip. Then the water lifted and set me down like I was a cup on a saucer, and I let my body remember what it feels like to be carried. I brought a single coil I'd saved, curled into itself like a comma. I don't know if that's silly, but I put rosemary oil on it, whispered one sentence I needed to say out loud, "Mine," and let it go. The tide took it, because that's what tides do. Back at the hotel, my phone was full of small, practical things. Reimbursement hit, already cleared. A calendar hold from Ann for input on the new training. She wants to pay me as a consultant for the hours, and the request read like she'd held her breath typing it and I was going to teach her a new way to speak. A note from the detective that the judge had signed the long-term order for a year, no exceptions, no third-party loopholes. And a second note I didn't expect, the state's victim services offered to cover a portion of my January protective style, on top of what the company is doing. I cried again, but it was the clean kind. I did one ridiculous thing. I booked a photographer for an hour, a woman someone at the salon recommended. We met at golden hour by a wall the exact color of a grapefruit. I wrapped my scarf low and then high, turned my head to catch the light, then didn't turn it at all. She told me when to breathe. I don't know what I'll do with the photos yet, but the idea of choosing which ones anyone ever sees felt like medicine. When my plane touched back down, there was an envelope at my door from corporate. Inside was a letter that didn't sound like a brochure. It had signatures on ink that had clearly dried under real hands, Gary, Ann, the COO, and language that said the hair policy is now policy, not a promise, with tests and consequences and someone's bonus tethered to it. There was also a separate check, a wellness stipend, they call it, which is hilarious and fine. I'm going to buy too many silk pillowcases and a steamer for my plants. Balance, I guess. I still jump when someone behind me makes the wrong kind of sound. I still feel a ghost tug at the end of a curl that isn't there. But I can feel the ground under my feet when I wake up. Tonight I'm going to oil my scalp, answer none of the calls I don't have to, and open the windows. The air is cold enough to bite and my apartment smells like rosemary, sea salt, and paper that finally says what it should have said all along. Update 4. They turned a conference room into a studio and I stood under a ring light while a makeup artist patted the shine off my forehead with something that smelled like almond. There was a white noise machine humming in the hall because IT said the servers make a whistling sound you don't hear until you're trying to form sentences. On the screen behind the camera, the title card said, "Scissors are not a thought experiment." Leon grinned when I saw it and pretended he didn't pick the font himself. And hovered at the edge of a light circle, a legal pad in her hand and her hair pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt. They wanted me to talk for 6 minutes. Not a handbook, not a law seminar, just the human part, what it means to have your body treated like community property and your hair treated like a project. The first take I sounded like I was reading a manual. The second one, I let myself say the real words out loud. I said my hair is part of my lineage and my livelihood, and that asking is a full sentence. I said, if your curiosity is louder than someone else's autonomy, turn it down. In the back of the room, Gary coughed in a way that meant he was swallowing a feeling, then pretended to fuss with his tie. When we wrapped, maintenance wheeled in a plastic tub with a zip-tied lid stamp tools. Somewhere between filming days, someone wrote a new policy that says event scissors live with facilities and need a sign-out sheet and an adult signature. Child-proofing for grown-ups. It's late and it's right. The DA called while I was sitting on a rolling chair in that same conference room, eating a banana I'd forgotten I packed. Arraignment came and went. He entered a not guilty plea, then changed to no contest at the pretrial, paperwork, the video, the order, the package at my building, all of it made the path narrow. Misdemeanor battery, 12 months probation, 80 hours of community service not of his choosing, mandatory classes, restitution set to the exact amount on the reimbursement and future protective style appointment. The no contact order remains for a year, any violation turns the misdemeanor into a different conversation. I asked the DA if restitution could be rerouted to the org that's putting textured hair kits in schools if I'm already covered. He said if I make that request in writing, they'll attach it to the file. You're allowed to pick where the repair goes, he said, and I wrote that sentence on the back of an envelope like it was a spell. The org director invited me to see one of their drop-offs. We met in a school gym that still had a faded hawk painted at center court and the kind of light that makes everything look like afternoon. The kits came in blue boxes lined up on a folding table, wide tooth combs, silk scrunchies, satin pillowcases, leave-in conditioner that smelled like citrus and something soft. A guidance counselor rolled out a rug with the alphabet on it and I sat on an E while we stuffed a few dozen more, my fingers finding a rhythm that felt like braiding even when I wasn't. It was practical and tender and so normal. On my way out, the janitor pointed at the pillowcase and said, "Those don't slide off as easy, right?" And I said, "That's the point." He gave me a thumbs up and went back to his mop. Corporate legal and my lawyer stopped circling and put pens to paper. The agreement is boring in the expensive way those documents are, but the parts that matter don't read like brochures. I can tell my story however and whenever I want. I can speak on panels, participate in training, write if I feel like writing. There's no gag, no mutual pretty words clause. The donation line is real and there are receipts, both to the school kits org and to a haircare fund Leon found that quietly pays for kids' first protective styles. The hair policy is not a paragraph in a PDF anymore, it has teeth, and a date by which managers will be evaluated on whether their teams pass the training. Gary sent it with his signature and a note that said simply, "Thank you for insisting." I printed that page and slid it under a magnet shaped like a mango on my fridge. I finally went for the protective style. My stylist sectioned my hair with the care of a cartographer and fed in braiding hair so smoothly I forgot, halfway through, where mine ended and the added began. Knotless, waist length, tips sealed with a cup of hot water and a laugh when I flinched the first time. When she swung a braid over my shoulder and said, "There you go," it felt like she handed me a rope across a gap I hadn't known how to cross. Walking home, I could feel the weight at my back like a good backpack, like armor I chose. On the elevator up to my place, a man in a suit reached to push past me when the doors pinged open and I stepped sideways without thinking. My hand went up, palm out. Not dramatic. Automatic. He paused and said, "Oh, sorry," and hung back. It took 3 steps down the hall for my pulse to slow. A small calibration. A tiny proof I can hold my own shape in space again without narrating the whole history aloud. The photos from the beach landed in my inbox the same afternoon. There's one where my scarf is tied low and the sun makes a stripe across my cheekbone and I look like I'm thinking about an answer I haven't decided to give yet. There's another where I'm not trying to look like anything, and that one is going on my wall. The photographer sent a voice memo that said, "You look like steadiness," and I listened to it twice and then deleted it so it lived just in my head where I could pull it out when I needed it. There was one more strange blip. A certified letter arrived addressed to my building, not me, tucked under the concierge's hand like a secret. "Legal junk, probably," he said, eyes tracking my face. It was from his attorney to mine, a tidy little packet that included a statement where he said the words, "Apology," without saying the words "I harmed you." My lawyer handled it. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and watered my plants until the soil went dark and the apartment smelled like dirt and rosemary. The steamer I bought makes the fiddle leaf look smug again. I'm okay with a smug plant. When we launched the training, I watched the progress bar tick across the top of my laptop, green sections filling in for each department, each team, and sent me a screenshot of the completion dashboard with a ridiculous number of exclamation points and a note that said the facilities team had already made their toolkit sign-out station look like TSA. Leon texted me a photo of a poster he hung in the break room that says "Ask is a verb. Consent is a policy." He added, "Your line," and put a scissors emoji after it. I rolled my eyes so hard I almost saw the back of my head and smiled anyway. The night after, I walked to the corner store for milk and a red grapefruit because I wanted to see if the wall in the photos really was that color or if the light lied. It's close. I came home, unwrapped my braids, oiled my parts, and tucked my ends into a scarf that smells like the beach and rosemary and whatever steam is made of. Somewhere downstairs a kid was practicing jingle bells on a trumpet with more ambition than skill. It wasn't pretty. It made me laugh out loud. I flipped off the overheads, lit one candle, and felt the room click into place around me. There's a court date on a calendar and a policy with my fingerprints on it and a photo of me not trying to look brave, just being. It's not a ribbon around the story. It's a knot I tied myself. Update 5. The labor board hearing was on a Wednesday at 9 a.m., the kind of hour that feels like a hallway. We were little boxes on a screen, me, Gary, a hearing officer with half-moon glasses, his attorney, a court reporter who never looked up from her keys. It wasn't about me, technically. It was about whether his termination counted as misconduct for unemployment. Still, my name sat in the middle of it like a lit match. The attorney tried on phrases like impulsive and out of character, and then reached for the same thing he always reaches for. The hearing officer let him finish and said, "Very plain, the Ada is a ramp, not a sword." She used the words willful disregard a few minutes later and I felt the long, slow exhale of a building releasing heat. "Decision to follow in writing," she said, but her tone did the underlining. An hour after I closed the laptop, the detective called to tell me the DA's office was ready to release property and did I want the scissors back. The question made me laugh out loud, one startled bark that turned into nothing. He sounded embarrassed, like he'd just tried to hand me a live fish. "We can destroy them," he added quickly. I pictured the chain of custody sticker chewing on itself at the corners, the steel that met my hair under fluorescent party lights, and said, "Let them be done." He hummed in agreement, a small sound, and told me he'd mark it for disposal. There was something ceremonial in saying no. That afternoon I drove to my aunt's place with a silk bag in my lap like a secret. She greeted me on the porch with 2 mugs that smelled like cedar. We didn't talk much. She laid out a square of cloth and a length of red cotton ribbon and waited until I set the thing I'd carried on the table. The severed chunk had dried into an unruly river. In the salon it had felt like evidence. In her hands, it looked like a story partway told. She lit sage and moved the smoke in slow loops and asked me if I wanted to keep it, bury it, or burn it. We returned what was taken to a place that knows what to do with it, she said. We dug a small pocket under her rosemary bush where the soil held damp a few inches down. I pressed the hair into the earth and tied the ribbon to the lowest branch. The knot was nothing fancy. It held anyway. When we stood, the wind moved just enough to lift the ribbon's tail and it looked like the bush had learned to breathe with me. Back at HQ, the world did that corporate magic trick where something that should take months happens in a week if someone with a budget wants it to. Procurement slid a new clause into vendor agreements about cutting tools and consent like it had been waiting there the whole time. Facilities turned their sign-out station into a tiny altar to common sense with lockboxes and labels and the kind of clipboard that makes your pen suddenly write neater. Anne's team spun up a follow-up module with scenarios, not just slides, and Leon sent me a clip where an actor took a beat and said, "Curiosity isn't neutral," like he was saying grace. My face shows up for 6 minutes and 7 seconds in that training, hair in braids and lips shiny with the gloss the makeup artist swore by, saying the lines I meant. Watching strangers watch me on screen was its own odd echo. I didn't look away. There was one more legal blip. A notification landed from the labor board before dinner time, benefits denied due to misconduct. The letter was dry on purpose, but there was a sentence in it about credible testimony corroborated by video evidence, and when I read it, I realized I'd been braced for a wobble I didn't have to make. I put the letter under the mango magnet next to Gary's thank you and let them overlap like a Venn diagram of grown-ups doing their jobs. A small, sideways thing happened too. The Community Arts Center down the street messaged me through their official email with a subject line that just said adornment. They're curating a show about hair as history and asked if they could include one of my beach photos, the one where the scarf sits low and I look like I'm making a decision and haven't decided to share how it ends. The photographer said yes before I could answer and I said yes after my chest stopped doing the rabbit thing. Opening night, the grapefruit color on the wall was almost perfect. People move slow the way people do when they want to touch and know they shouldn't. A girl my niece's age tilted her head and then tilted it the other way and then said to no one, "It looks like quiet that talks." I wanted to hug her and didn't. Instead I bought a cheap glass of something in a compostable cup and texted my aunt a picture of the ribbon at her rosemary bush catching the same wine the gallery's air vents were making. A stranger from the state's education department found me in that crowd in front of the photograph and asked if I'd come talk to a group of high school counselors about hair policies and the way no hats codes turn into no use. I caved immediately and then went home and washed the smell of other people's wine out of my braids. When I stood in front of those counselors a week later in a multi-purpose room that smelted like dry erase and teenage gum, I said the sentence that has been following me, "Ask" is a full sentence. One of them scribbled it on a sticky note and bent it around his badge. And asked me, quietly, if I wanted to formalize the work I'd been doing into a sliver of my job description, 10%, carve out to consult on training and policy. It came with a title that sounded both too big and just right, subject matter partner. We laughed at how vague it was and I said yes because I like a phrase that leaves room to invent. The raise attached wasn't showy but it showed. I bought my mom a ridiculous bouquet and myself a kettle that sings when it boils like it's practicing for opera. There was one unnerving moment that didn't turn into a story. Walking home from the grocery with a bag of clementines cutting circulation into my fingers, I saw his wife across the street outside the post office, coat open, hair tucked behind one ear. For a window of time the size of a heartbeat, the city went quiet around her. She didn't look over. I kept stepping. The no contact order sat in my pocket like a talisman I didn't need to pull out. The clementines knocked against my leg in their little net as if to say, keep moving, keep moving. I'm trying to notice when my body chooses me. In the mornings I count my parts as I oil my scalp, straight line, curve, curve, and the peppermint tingle tells me when I've missed a spot. In elevators I let my back find the wall and feel the cold of it on purpose. I said yes to a haircut class at the salon where the stylist showed us how to refresh braids without pretending they're new, how to keep what you've built without starting over. At the end, she handed me a small jar of rosemary-infused oil and said, "For your ribbon bush," like she had been there, and I put it in my pocket and didn't cry until my door was shut. The night the Arts Center show closed, the trumpet kid downstairs had moved on to scales that made sense. He still cracked on a high note and swore under his breath like a cartoon, and I laughed alone in my kitchen with the windows open to the cold. The air smelled like citrus peel, rosemary, and a little dust from the heater. I unwound my scarf, checked the knot at one braid where I'd been tugging, and let the weight of them sit on my shoulders like a hand I trust. Somewhere between the rosemary bush and the grapefruit wall and the clipboard in facilities, the story shifted from what was done to me into what I am doing. It isn't a bow. It's another knot. This one I learned on purpose, and when I pull it tight, it holds.